Hello ladies and gentle ladies, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial for Fabric 1.21, and in this tutorial we're going to be doing some datagen. So if you don't know what datagen is, then basically datagen is what it says. We are going to generate the data that we use in our mod. So we're going to generate the assets, and we're also going to generate the actual data stuff as well. So we'll generate the block states, the lang, the models, we'll generate the tags for our block, and also the loot tables. And then in the future we'll also generate things such as recipes, we'll generate things such as biomes, dimensions, ore generation, trees. All of those things will also be data generated, as well as in the future we'll move on to custom recipe types, which will also we'll create our own data generators for. So datagen is really handy, and honestly for the longest time I was not a fan of datagen. I always just thought it was quicker to copy JSON files. It turns out that's not true, and I was quite stupid, honestly, for thinking that was true, because it's way easier to just do datagen. Even though Fabric's datagen is not quite as good as Forge's, it's still much quicker and much better than copy-pasting JSONs. And it's better to get started with it sooner rather than later. So the first thing we're going to do is actually delete a bunch of stuff. So we're going to delete everything that we already have inside of our assets. Now, obviously you need to be careful here. If you have any custom models or anything kind of more custom outside of the default, maybe don't delete that. But I'm going to delete the stuff that I know we're going to be fine to generate. So my block states, I know I can just delete this because we only have just kind of like a default block state here. So that's going to be easy to generate. We can remove that. Our lang, that's, well, in terms of lang, you may or may not want to do datagen for lang. In this, I'll show you how to do it, and we are going to do it. But a lot of people don't like generating language files because it doesn't necessarily make a huge amount of sense. But we're going to be doing that anyway, so I will delete that. The models, now I don't have any custom models in here, so I can delete these. But if you have custom models, then obviously don't delete those. Since you won't be able to generate custom models, that doesn't make any sense. So I can just delete these because I don't have any custom models. But in the future, when we start doing custom models, we'll obviously have to add back these packages, so we can just delete those. And obviously we leave the textures since we can't data gen textures. And then in terms of the data directory, we just have loot tables and tags in here, so we can just delete that whole entire data directory. Okay, now in the setup tutorial, you should have, presuming you're following from the setup tutorial, you should have obviously ticked the datagen box when we set up the mod, so you should have this class already. If you don't, there is some things you can do, if I recall correctly, in the build.gradle to add this in. Let me see if I can find it. So I think you need this right here. So Fabric API configure datagen. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create our actual datagen pack. So what we're going to do is we're going to type fabric data generator.pack, and that will give us a pack. And that's going to be equal to fabric data generator.create pack. Nice and simple. So from our pack, we can actually go ahead and add each of our providers. So let's first create an actual provider that we want to use. So we're going to start with just the block states and models. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new package inside of our main package, and I'm just going to call this data. And then inside of there, I'm just going to create a new package for provider. And then inside of here, we're going to create our actual providers. So yeah, as I say, we're going to get started with models and block states. Now, models and block states are done in the exact same one. So what we can do is a new class, and generally the way you call this is the name of your mod. So my mod is tutorial mod, and then you would say model provider. That seems to be the convention I've seen most people use, so that's what I'm going to be using. And this is just going to extend fabric model provider. And in here we can basically do both loot tables and not loop table, we can do block states and the models as well. So let's also add the constructor matching super. There we go. And that just takes in your output there, which we don't actually need to do anything with this constructor. We just need to have it there. Do the item model first, since that's the way we started these tutorials. So all you need to do for a very basic item is do item model generator dot register. We're going to register the specific item that we want it for, so example item, and then we're going to say models dot generated, and that is it. That's all you need to do to generate an item model. So we're also going to do that for our food as well. So we're going to do dot register item init dot example food models dot generated, and you'll see in models here there are a bunch of other models that you can choose to use. Now some of these may not work just by using register, so you may also have to use one of these different register methods if that's necessary. In the future, obviously, we'll move on to doing some of these other ones when necessary. But note, the other one you may want to use is handheld, which would be for like a stick, for example, uses a different handheld model, or tools, so swords, pickaxes, those kind of things, they use a different model, so that would be handheld. But ours are just both generated, so we don't need to worry about that. And for the block, now we just have a simple cube all block, so there's nothing really special. So all we need to do is block state model generator dot register simple cube all. And you see there are a bunch of other ones in here as well, and obviously you can use any of those if you wish. Vanilla has kind of most of the ones you would ever want, so you can just use those. But once again, we're going to use register simple cube all, and we're just going to say block init dot example block, and boom, that is it. That is all you need for your block and for your item. So now we can go back to our data generator class, and we can go pack dot add provider. Then we're going to take the output and the registry's future, and we're going to do a new, and this will be a new, the name of our provider, so tutorial mod provider, and that just takes in our output. And you'll see there is also one without the registry's future, so you can do that, I believe. And then it actually doesn't like that. I thought you could do that, but apparently you can't do that. Either way, you can shorten it down with using method references, so we can actually do tutorial model provider : new, and you'll see that's actually even simpler there. So we can just do that. Nice. So let's move on from the models and block states, and let's just do the lang. So the lang is really simple. So we can do tutorial mod. Now this one's going to be for English, so I'm going to do an English language provider. You see that's quite a long class name. So if you really wanted, you could do like you could change it to EN language provider. I'm going to keep it English, and then you can extend fabric language provider, and then we're going to add the methods. So we're going to generate, there we go, and then we're also going to want the constructor. Now you see there are two different constructors that we can choose to use. We're going to select the bottom one, and I'll show you why in a second. And you'll see that this one takes in a language code as the second parameter. So this is basically going to be the language that you want to use. Now the language we want to use is going to be ENUS. So we can actually just remove this parameter from the constructor, and we can instead pass that directly to the super. So we can say EN_US like that. Now by default, it actually is EN_US. So we can actually just remove that, and then that will default to ENUS. But obviously you would need that if you wanted to do something other than ENUS. And you see it also takes in a completable feature of the registry lookup. So when we do pack.add provider, you see that this second parameter here is that registry's future. So we can actually just do the exact same thing basically. So we can English language provider : new, like that. And it doesn't seem to like that because it looks like we forgot to make our constructor public. So there you go, and then that error goes away. Nice. So once we've done that, we can add the translations for our items and our blocks. So this is once again super simple. So we can go translation builder dot add. We're going to go item init dot example item, and we're just going to call this example item. Nice and simple. Translation builder dot add item init dot example food, and this is example food. Once again, nice and simple. Let's do our block. So translation builder dot add block in it dot example block. Boom. Now, what if we want to do our creative tab as well? Well, actually, that will be a little more complicated. So if we go into our init and we go into our item group init here, you see we have this text that we're using for translation. So what we're actually going to need to do is make this a public static final text. And basically what that will allow us to do is access this from in here. So we can do translation builder dot add. Now you'll see there actually isn't anything for item groups or for text even. So the way we need to do this is actually add this as an identifier. So this text as an identifier. Now how do we do that? Well, we're actually going to create a method to do that for us. So we're going to go with a private static void. This method we will call add text. Now this is going to take in a translation builder. So this translation builder right here. So we're going to say that this is not null. So just to say that it's not null. So we never pass in null there. So we can do a translation builder, which will be, we'll just call it the builder to keep it simple. Then we're also going to need to pass in the actual text as well. So I'm going to say not null, because once again, this shouldn't be null. And this is text from net.minecraft.text.text, by the way, not the other one. So that is just the text. And then we want to pass in the actual value as well, of course. So that also needs to be not null. So we'll go string value like that. Now all we need to do in here is do builder.add. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the text. And we're going to get the content. So this gives us a text content class. Now we actually need to go ahead and then get the key from that content, but by default this is just a text content, so it's not necessarily translatable, so there is no key, so we can't just do get key. So what we actually have to do is cast this, and we're going to cast it to a translatable text content, and then we're going to do get key, and then we're going to pass in the value. So basically what we're doing here is we're getting the text, right? So the actual text object that we have. We're then getting the contents from that text. Now, because this is just text, it's not translatable text, it's not literal text, it's just text. We don't know what it actually is. We need to get the content that we actually get from it is just a generic text content. But we need to get the key from it. So we need to get it from a translatable text content. So we can just cast that to a translatable text content. And then we're allowed to get the key from it. So using the key, we then add that in here. And that basically is the translation key that it will directly add to the language file. And then it will map it to this value that we have right here. Now, obviously, doing a cast like this is somewhat unsafe. So if you wanted, we could obviously just do an instance of check, and that would actually be a little bit simpler. So we'll do that actually just to make it a little bit safer. So if text.getContent is instance of translatable text content, and we'll just say translatable text content, sure. Then what we'll do is we'll just do builder.add translatable text content.getKey and value. So that's a little bit simpler to understand there if you were confused at all. Sure. So that's perfectly fine as well. And you could add an else statement as well. You could do just something like tutorial mod.logger, and you could add a warning maybe. And you could say something like fail to add translation for text, and then that just gets it as a string, which, yeah, should be perfectly fine. Okay, and then all we need to do in our generate translations is do add text, and we can do item group init dot example title, and then we can give it the translation. So the translation I want to add is just the name of my mod, so that is just tutorial mod. And it actually doesn't seem to like that because we're also missing the builder, so the translation builder as the first parameter. There you go. And boom, that should be it. So that should be fine. Now let's move on to the block loot tables. So I'm only going to be doing a basic loot table here, but you can obviously look through vanilla if you want to do something more complex. So we'll go tutorial mod block loot provider, loot table will do. So it's tutorial mod block loot table provider. So there are different providers if you want an entity loot table or a chest loot table or those kind of things. Okay, so since we're doing this for blocks, what we want to extend is fabric block loot table provider. But let's just quickly show you how you can do it for if you wanted to do chests, for example, since it is a little bit different, and I'll just quickly show you how you can do that. So what we need to do is extend simple fabric loot table provider like that. We need to implement the methods, so that's just the accept method, and then we need to add the constructor like that, and we're going to remove this loot context type from the parameters, and we're just going to directly put in here the actual type. So we're going to do loot table context types like that, so it needs to be plural, and then you have the different types that you can add. So let's say we're doing chest, and then all you need to do in here is you can get the loot table by consumer, and you can accept. So you need to actually have a key that is used for this. So that will be a private static final, and this can just be a registry key of loot table, and then we can say that this is, for example, example underscore chest, and then we can set that equal to registry key dot of, and we can say the actual key, so registry keys dot loot table, and then we can give it an identifier, so for example tutorial mod dot id, and we can just say test or example underscore chest like that. Close that off with your brackets, and then you can accept that into here, so you can say example chest, and then you can give it your loot table builder, so we can do loot table dot builder, and basically here is where you actually construct your loot table. So you first would say the pools. I'm just going to do a single pool here, and then you can do loot pool dot builder, and then on there you can add the roles. So you can say roles, and we can say that there is a constant loot number provider dot create. We'll just say there's always going to be one, basically, and also you can do non-constant. So I think there is a range. No, what is it? Let's go to implementations of loot number provider. Here you go. So you have uniform. So you could do uniform loot number provider dot create, and then you have a min and a max, so maybe between 1 and 3, for example. Then you can say with, and then we can add an item entry, so item entry dot builder. We need to pass in the actual item, so let's say for example item init dot example item. Then on this item, you can apply any conditions, for example, or functions. So you can apply, and maybe we want to set the count, right? So we'll do a set count loot function dot builder, and then this provides our number provider. So this time we'll use constant, but you can use obviously uniform or binomial or whatever. And we'll say create, and we'll say 2, for example, like that. And then maybe you want to do another item. So we can say dot with, we can do item entry dot builder. This time maybe we want to give it the food, so item init dot example food. Then maybe we want to once again apply that set count, so we'll say set count loot function dot builder. This time maybe we want to make it only a certain chance between like 0 and 1, so maybe we'll do a uniform loot number provider, and then we can say dot create between 0 and 1. So it's only a small chance that you get one, or we'll just say 0 and 2. And then we can apply another function on that. So after that, we could say dot apply. Have I got the brackets wrong there? I have. So we can say apply. There you go. And you could say, for example, well, there's loads of functions. So if you come into set loot table function, you have a conditional loot function. So if you go to implementations, you can see all of the different functions that you can apply here. So let's see, what do we want to do? Let's think of something interesting we could do here. Okay, sure, enchant randomly loot function, right? So we can apply enchant randomly loot function dot create, and you can apply, you know, whatever else as well. You can add conditions as well. So inside of conditions, you need a condition builder. So let's just go into that class if we can. Let's go into here, builder, and there's 7 implementations. So you have your different conditions. So you can do, for example, a weather check loot condition, right? So we'll close that and we'll say a weather check loot condition dot create, and then you can say that it has to be raining, right, like that. And you can add other conditions as well, and I think you get the point anyway. So loot tables are obviously quite complicated. You can give like quality as well. You can give weight. I think these are actually ints. There you go. So weight as well, and etc, etc. You get the point, right? So that's how you would do that kind of thing, and then you build it like that. And I think we're missing probably a bracket. There you go. And obviously you can add more pools. You can add, you know, whatever. So yeah, that's how you create a loot table for a non-block. But we're not going to be doing a non-block. So let's remove this like that. Let's also remove our constructor as well. And let's go back to extending the fabric block loot table provider. We're going to implement the methods, generate. There we go. And we're going to add the constructor as well. And we need to make sure this is a public constructor. Now, all we're going to do in here is just do drop self. I think it's actually just drop, isn't it? Yes, it is. So then you can do block init.example block. And basically that will just drop itself, right? Nice and simple. But you can do other stuff in here as well. So you can do, you know, add drop. Is actually add drop the right one? It might be add drop that you're meant to do. I think it actually is add drop. There you go. But you see there's other ones in here. If you wish to just use Misode for loot tables, feel free. I wouldn't entirely blame you, since using a GUI is always quite handy. But yeah, that's how you do loot tables. So let's just add that in here. So we'll do pack.add provider. We'll go tutorial mod block loot table provider, colon new. And then the final thing we have to do is tags. So let's create a new class. Now this is going to be for block tags, but it's effectively the exact same for item tag, entity tags, fluid tags, all those kind of things. But we're going to be doing block tags, so we're going to go tutorial mod block tag provider, which is going to extend the block tag provider like that. We're going to implement the methods and we're going to add the constructor. Okay, make sure your constructor is public, of course. Now inside of here, all we need to do is git or create tag builder. We're first going to do our needs iron tool tag. So we're going to do block tags dot needs iron tool. You'll also see there's diamond and stone as well if you want to do those. And all you need to do is add block init dot example block. Boom. And you can also do other things as well. So you can add optional, so an optional tag. You can also do force add tag as well, and you can also set replace to false or true if you wanted to replace the tag for whatever reason. But obviously we don't want to do that. All we want to do is just add to it. And then we're also going to do the mineable tag as well. So block tags dot pickaxe mineable, and we're just going to add block init dot example block. And I'm just going to quickly show you how you can do a custom tag as well, so a non-vanilla tag. So all we need to do is do a private static final. This will be a tag key of type block, since we're doing block in this case, and that's block from net.minecraft.block.block, of course. And we'll just call this example tag. We can say that is equal to tag key dot of. We can say registry keys dot block. And then we can say tutorial mod.id, and we can say that this is the example tag, maybe, for example. And then all you would need to do is git or create tag builder. We can do example tag. Then we can add our block. So add block init, example block, and we could also add vanilla blocks, right? So we could do blocks dot blue orchid, sure. and etc. You get the point. And if you didn't want to do something from your mod, so maybe something from a different mod, I don't know the specific mechanism tags, for example, but obviously, or even, is mechanism even in Fabric? I don't know. Probably not. But for example, you could have something like this. So you would say a new identifier, or it's actually not a new identifier anymore, is it? It's identifier.of. Identifier.of. There you go. The namespace, basically just the mod ID. Right, so this is how you would add tags for another mod, right? And then you would say whatever their tag is. So, I don't know. Crushables. It's probably not a thing. But it doesn't really matter because this is just an example, of course. But and basically what that would do is that would add it to that tag as well. But we don't want that. We're going to go back to our own tag. And I'm actually going to leave that there just to show you how that works as well. Lovely. So we'll go back into our main class. We'll do pack.addProvider. We'll do a tutorial mod block tag provider ::new, like that. Now we can close both of those and we need to run it. So we can go to our Gradle tab. Inside of Fabric, we can go run datagen, and we'll just give this a second. We should see it starts up. And then once that has started up, we should see a brand new source set appear, which should be the generated source set. And in theory, this should have everything perfectly generated. So let's just let this go through. There you go. We now see a generated source set. We have the cache in here, which is just a cache, basically. So it knows what it's generated, what it needs to regenerate, etc. We have our block state, so just our block state in there. We have our lang in here. We have our block model in here. We have our item models, so those are all fine. Inside of data, we have the Minecraft tags, right? So it needs iron tool. We have the mineable pickaxe tag, and we also have our custom tags, and our loot table as well is also in here. And our tag as well, which has added the Minecraft one as well. So that's perfect. That is everything that we need. And obviously, as I say, in the future, we will go ahead and do other things with datagen. So we'll do biomes, we'll do all of the world gen stuff. We'll do custom recipe types. We'll do enchantments maybe as well, because I think those are done through JSON now. We'll do just normal recipes as well, and all those kind of things. So that will be quite exciting. But let's just quickly test if this works. It should work. There shouldn't be any problems. And we'll just check that everything still exists. Where's my item group gone? Where is my item group gone?
298 frozen patties later.
When I did the tutorial, I forgot the filter. We are checking if the blacklist contains. So this is actually a whitelist, not a blacklist. It's a good job I'm recording this before I've finished editing the item group tutorial, because I'll have in time to fix that. So if you've watched this, you probably won't have actually had this error. But that was a silly mistake from me. So if I actually run that now, it turns out if your item group is empty, it doesn't show up, which makes sense, to be fair. But yeah, that's good to know that I got that the wrong way around, because otherwise I probably would have uploaded that tutorial and not even realized. So that's great. So let's just load back in, test that works, and we should be able to see everything is translated. And I'm not going to test the loot tables and tags, because I know they'll be fine if everything else is. But yeah, everything looks to be perfectly fine as well. So that's good, isn't it? Yeah, everything's fine in the hand. Everything's got the correct name. So that has all worked. So yeah, I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, please do be sure to give it a like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support me to continue making these tutorials, then you can join my Patreon, which is linked in the description. And there's a bunch of other links as well. There is also the Discord, so if you have any problems, feel free to go there, and there'll probably be someone there to help you. So yeah, I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.